Okay, let me just make sure I got this right. You said your girlfriend cheated on you because Mercury was in Gatorade?
Retrograde.
What? Hi, I'm Lorenzo, and I like to take a not-so-serious look at explaining things. So, Mercury is in Gatorade. I mean retrograde. If you're someone who's really deep into astrology, it probably seems like the next 3 weeks are gonna be a really chaotic time for you. But if you're someone who's a little bit more like me, who's more sciencey interested, it doesn't mean anything to you at all. Now, I'm definitely deep in the skeptics camp on this one, but I promise you by the end of this episode, I am gonna be the most horoscopical, astronomical, wait, that's a real science, astrological person you have ever met. So what we'll do is we'll take a little look at the basics, things like horoscopes, the signs, planets, elements, what retrograde has to do with anything. And at the very end, we'll take a little bit of a look also at what scientists and psychologists have as their own explanation for things. And on that shady note, let's start with the big question. What is astrology actually? According to the most reliable source of information that teachers still love to hate, astrology is a pseudoscience that claims to divine information about human affairs and terrestrial events by studying the movements and relative positions of celestial objects. Breaking that down, astrology is a false science, more on that at the end, that attempts to predict important events in your life and explain aspects of your personality based on the positions of things such as the sun, the planets, and the moon. So there's actually a lot of different kinds of astrology, like Chinese and Vedic, for example, but the kind you're probably thinking of right now is called Western astrology. Don't worry about the shirt change, by the way, my horoscope told me to do it. So our story starts off with the ancient Babylonians, who noticed that things like the seasons and the tides kinda matched up with where the stars, planets, and moon were. Associating these objects with their gods, they felt that tracking them could give hints about future events. Sound familiar? Later on, the Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and eventually Central and Western Europeans pretty much played one big game of, hey bro, can I copy your homework real quick? Yeah man, just change it up a little bit so no one notices, okay? And that's basically how we got to where we are today. So a horoscope is basically like a weather forecast of your future based on the location of the stars and the planets around the time that you were born. This information is then put into what is called a natal chart, which is then used to make those really vague and general predictions that we all like to think of as our daily and weekly horoscopes. Okay then, so what exactly is a zodiac then? So the zodiac is actually this area up in the sky that's slightly off from the path that the sun appears to follow over the course of the year. Based on the way the Earth orbits the sun, constellations within the zodiac area will fall in the sphere of view from Earth at different points of the year along the path of the sun, along with the moon and the 5 planets. This area is then divided into 12 houses that roughly correspond with the constellation or the sign that was visible during the time when astrology was first invented, and are supposed to relate to certain aspects of life and characteristics that influence you when you're born. So now you know. Now the names of these houses might actually sound just a little bit familiar to some of you. Personally, I think the whole 12-house sorting system is a bit too complicated, and I think there's actually a much better way of doing it.
Gryffindor!
But hey, I mean, to each their own, right? So for anyone who might be wondering right now, What's Lorenzo's sign? First of all, comment down below real quick what you think it is before I tell you. Could be fun, let's see what goes on. But 2, yeah, it's actually Libra. And as someone who doesn't really believe in horoscopes, I gotta say, I find it just a little bit
disrespectful
how well some of the characteristics line up with descriptions people have given me of myself over the years. But then again, half of them have absolutely no resemblance to me, so take from it what you will. And of course, naturally, just to make things a bit harder, each sign falls under one of the 4 classical elements. Each element is supposed to indicate personality traits that define you, and also suggest things like who you're compatible with. Usually the same element. So, it turns out that I am an air sign. And besides already knowing that, since 9-year-old me wanted to be, and had the head shape of an airbender, I'll admit that while some traits were really far off, a few of them actually did seem pretty close. And finally, the planets. Each of the planets that earlier astrologers knew about are believed to have an influence over people depending on things like where they're positioned, with these planets having stronger influence over the signs they're paired with, and being at max power when they're aligned with these signs. So what does any of this have to do with Mercury being in retrograde? Astronomically, retrograde refers to when the Earth moves past another planet in orbit, creating the illusion from Earth that the other planet is moving backwards. So, astrologically, it's kind of taken very literally, where it's seen that the traits that people would have attributed to those planets are actually kind of reversed and kind of messed up a bit during this time. So Mercury, the planet of communication, travel, and technology, supposedly ends up causing things like issues with planning, arguments, car problems, and even computer crashes. While Venus, known as the planet of love, despite literally being a scorching death trap with clouds made of sulfuric acid, is supposed to create and uncover all kinds of relationship issues. Congratulations! You made it through the Lorenzo Explains crash course on astrology. You now know a little bit more about astrology, horoscopes, and the Mercury inside your Gatorade. So now it's time for that elephant in the room. What does science and research have to say about astrology? Well, to sum it up in 3 words, unfortunately, horoscopes don't work. To make it a little bit longer, there's a lot of reasons. There's literally so many reasons and studies on the topic that there's an entire article on Wikipedia just about this subject. But I'm just gonna pick a few examples and then link the article in the description. To keep it simple, astrology kinda sucks at doing the one thing it's supposed to be good at: predicting things. For example, in the most famous and well-regarded astrology experiment in 1985, Dr. Sean Carlson conducted a double-blind study with 28 of the most highly respected professional astrologers of Europe and America, who worked with a team of physicists to agree on a fair experiment where their predictions were based on natal charts, not just their sun signs, and compared with participants' results on a proven and well-tested personality test called the CPI. The results? Turns out the astrologers' predictions weren't any better than chance, and for every study that's been carried out that wasn't poorly conducted, they all follow a similar pattern. Now you might be thinking, but Lorenzo, my horoscope is always accurate, what are you talking about? That's just cap.
That's cap! That's cap!
And to that I would say, there's actually a few good psychological reasons for that. So confirmation bias is this habit people have of paying attention to information that supports their beliefs and subconsciously ignoring information that goes against it. what typically happens is you'll selectively remember predictions that came true and forget the ones that weren't. So playing into this is something called the Barnum effect, where people have a tendency to strongly identify with descriptions they're led to believe are about their personalities, but are actually vague and general enough to apply to most people. These statements were taken from all the signs, and most people find the description to represent them extremely well. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if astrologers say that astrology is just a science we don't really understand yet, or that it might even lean a little bit closer to magic. The thing about it is, if it can't really predict the main things it's supposed to predict, then we kind of have a little bit of a problem here. But the thing is though, things don't always have to work the way they're intended to in order to make someone's life a little bit better, you know? If you feel like it gives you more of a positive spin on your day, and it inspires you to go out there and take little positive risks that improve your life a bit, then hey, you know, it really doesn't matter if you're a Virgo, or a Libra, or a Capri Sun. Just enjoy yourself. But don't take it too seriously though. Oh, hi! Didn't see you there. So, this video was sponsored by clicking the like button, because we're definitely not sponsored by these guys. But anyway, I wanted to congratulate you on making it to the end of another video. Clearly you've had a really good time where you're just really bored with nothing better to do, but you know. Let me add a little suggestion to this though. If you didn't know that there was a video before this, maybe you should give that video a watch. You never know. You might like that one too. And who knows, maybe 2 weeks from now, there might even be a third video you might like as well. Think about that.